what makes the Democrats' job right now compared with their competitors in the Republican Party so difficult are institutional hurdles that the Republican Party don't necessarily have to contend with.
My opposition to social democracy is its rhetorical proximity to socialism, which I view as like totally utopian and dog.
And so it's not about necessarily, I'm worried about them ascending to power. I'm worried about them enabling Republicans.
I'm going to try not to get you into too much trouble, but I had to say you have given me so much content. I figured I might as well like say thank you in person. So, and also in the lib and lurd dramas, I'm consistently taking your side. Sorry, you tell me your perspective on how things are going.
Kind of go off the cuff, but I do think that there's like a little bit of a moment happening right now that I think is necessary, a bit of a reckoning. I think that we'll just simplify and call them like the far left have been sort of running the show in terms of setting the narrative online for a really long time. And, there have been people that have been pushing back the whole time, but I think that it's different this time because Donald Trump, our perception, you may have a different perception, but like our perception of Donald Trump is that he is like literally Hitler almost. And so because he's so polarizing and he is so divisive and he energizes like the libs so much, I think people are seeing stuff like Hassan say that he would help Vance win before he would vote for Newsom. And it's making people like a lot more furious than maybe years prior. And so that stuff I think is getting more traction and causing more conversations as I think it should. So that's my view of things.
The take though that I think is scary to me because clearly, I've been rooting from the sidelines. Ideally, I call my community the COG, the community of grill hottists. People who are radical about being normal. And what is it? So the community, normal word, of normal word, grill. Like you love to grill, so you like being a normie with the grill.
Oh,
and then
okay. Yeah.
Hottest, like a Islamic extremist. So
gotcha. Okay. Yes. All right.
So for me, what I'm trying to do, because the far right has lost their fucking mind, in my opinion, the far left, maybe it's a temperamental thing, but they freak me the fuck out. So for me, I would like to build like a coalition of like center left, center right people who actually care about the Republic of the United States. It's off to a very limited start, I'll tell you. It's mostly libs who hate libs and hate leftists. And then it's a few conservatarians who hate Trump. But there's not enough conservatarians. So, it's kind of like me and half a dozen other people.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, so we're off to a rough start, but we are cheering you on as our proxy, because we're like, hey, at least like he's not a filthy socialist who's trying to, I don't know, overthrow capitalism or destroy the imperial core.
So I've watched a couple conversations that you've had with some people, and if I could offer a light critique,
go for it,
if you don't mind. My concern with the far left, we're just going to simplify and call the far left, but it's like a pretty broad spectrum, I think, and there's probably more precise language, but just for the sake of conversation, I'll just say far left. My perception of them and the threat that they pose is more about narrative setting online, whereas you seem to have the view, and I think you took this view when you had the conversation or a conversation with Pisco, you seem to take the view that they actually have, there's a chance that they could amass enough political power that they could actually like do the socialism stuff that they LARP about all the time. And I don't think that's true. I don't think that they're positioned at all to actually get that kind of power. Like my only interest in picking them on is to just push back against the narrative, because like they just dominate the narrative. Like they really dominate. We have normie libs like Adam Mockler and Brian Tyler Cohen and the Midas Touch people in the Bulwark, and they get a lot of numbers, but in terms of the especially like the Twitter narrative and definitely on Twitch, they're the ones that are handing out these talking points, and then their audience go in other people's mentions saying all this stupid shit. But I don't think these people are competent enough, quite frankly, to get anywhere close to the kind of power that you fear them having.
Yeah, that could be true, but also I think that if you asked me in 2010 what's going to happen with the Tea Party, and what I would have told you is that it's going to burn out. These people are not going to have power. They'll achieve a few tax breaks and then they'll evaporate. And then if you asked me about Donald Trump, I would have been like, oh, okay, well, he's an idiot and he's a dumbass, so it'll be like a meme for a few years. He'll have a meme presidency, and then it'll be so stupid he's not going to win election again. And if you ask me, about the Groypers, or if you ask me, there's a whole bunch of like dissident online groups that are setting the pace for the narrative. And weirdly enough, like even on the right wing right now, the JD Vance is a post-liberal Yarvanite tech feudal bro. And that's like a rawly online philosophical, thing.
Sorry.
Yeah. So all I was going to say is setting the narrative, just to complete the thought real quick, setting the narrative online can change the national zeitgeist. Changing the national zeitgeist can allow more nefarious ideas to become more broadly accepted.
Okay, here's where I want to push back though, because I think the difference between the groups that you listed and the people that I'm talking about is that the people that I'm talking about are almost literally allergic to power. There's a hard cap on how much power they can amass because they will subsume whoever reaches past a certain point. And I think you are seeing that with Mamdani right now, because I'm sure Mamdani freaks you out. A lot of his older rhetoric freaks me out. Like there's clips of him talking about like seizing the means of production. I didn't really love that when I was watching the clips of him, but he grew on me over time because I think it's pretty obvious that he is savvy and intelligent and understands like political power dynamics. I think he understands the limits of power. I think he understands little things that should be obvious, like he needs a good relationship with Hochul, and so he endorsed her really early. That pissed off a lot of lefties. They will, I think, turn on him inevitably, probably at some point in the next year. Until he shows me otherwise, that he's not this pragmatic person, they will turn on him. And so the way I view it is that these lefties view power within the United States structure, like political structure and economic structure, they view power to be inherently corrupt. And so if any of their favorite persons ever ascend to a certain level of power, they have to turn on them because they will view that person as corrupt, because otherwise how could they have gotten that power? And so they have this hard cap that they self-impose. And I find them to be staggeringly incompetent. So if I were you,
no, I'm with you, but I want to, because I don't like these people and I don't like their ideology, I want to maintain that. And I think that maintenance requires intentional effort, which includes fighting the ideals that might appeal to more people. So for instance, like I don't have a problem with social democracy in principle. Like I don't have a problem with like a robust welfare state, taking care of people and making sure that the working class and middle class have dignified lives. My opposition to social democracy is its rhetorical proximity to socialism, which I view as like totally utopian and dog shit. Like decommodification of basic human needs and workers owning the means of production and emancipating the working class from the from the oppressions of capitalism. I think those people can be like morally motivated, like they literally think that they're doing the right thing. But I think that in their moral motivations, they often become, like you said, ineffective, kind of stupid, myopic, utopian, non-pragmatic. But I want them to stay that way. Okay. And so I think
they will, though. I think they will.
Yeah,
I think they will stay stuck there.
But then if that's your position, why do you spend any time fighting them at all?
Because I think they depress votes. That's why I think they depress votes that would otherwise go to Democrats. And so it's not about necessarily, I'm worried about them ascending to power. I'm worried about them enabling Republicans by fostering a culture online of disaffected nihilism when it comes to the Democratic Party. Like, I think that if Hassan Piker stopped streaming tomorrow, it would net the Democrats' votes. I really believe that in my soul.
Yeah, give me 1 second just to thank an Oiler who thanked me. So Anonymous Chatter for 50 says, $50 to support Grill Hottest content, radical normies speaking with radical normies. I'm told I must vote with my oil. That's true. Anonymous Chatter with an additional 50, so $100. Thank you, King. Also, the more you two talk, the less time I have to spend on VOD viewing. So you or Hutch, and time is money or something like that. Thank you for the Oil King. Now, but who says that we have to align on motivation, right? Like, I appreciate you delineating our motivations and perspectives. That way the chat doesn't think that you and I are identical, but we don't have to share motivations in order to push in similar directions. So my thing, my thing can be the far right is psychotic. I want to see the return of a more normal right-wing political party. And the far left is, you're saying bad for Democrats, I'm saying bad for the country, therefore them getting stomped on is good. So we don't have to align in motivation.
We align there, yeah. No, but I was just thinking of, now I'm remembering, I think there was a point in a conversation that you had with Pisco where you said that you would support Vance over, who was the other candidate? Was it like AOC?
Not Newsom.
Did you say that you would...
I would support Newsom over Vance, but I might support Vance over Mamdani or AOC as an example.
Yeah.
You want to dig in?
I mean, yeah, I have a hard time with that. Yeah. Why don't you explain your reason?
You have a hard time in deciding who you're going to vote for, or you have a hard time with the perspective?
No, I would never. I would. It would be really difficult for me to imagine voting for Vance under any circumstances. But I suppose there could be a hypothetical candidate that would be so bad that I might consider it. But between Vance
what if Hassan Piker was the presidential nominee for the Democratic Party?
Yeah, I would Minecraft myself. Honestly, I really would Minecraft myself.
Just kill yourself at the airport. Nice.
Oh wait, you're a gun guy. I got some guns. I'm a gun owner now.
I know, but you're in California, right?
I am.
Dude, if you ever, I don't know if you have a girlfriend or a missus or a boyfriend or whatever, but if you guys ever have an opportunity to come to Orlando and you're like going to Disney or something, I would love. I mean, I don't think I'm going to be in LA anytime soon. But whenever we have an opportunity to get together IRL and go blow some shit up, I would love to do so. And your dad gave you a Colt Python, right?
He gave me a Colt Anaconda with an 8-inch barrel.
Dude,
fucking enormous.
That's a good dad. Okay, so your dad is a good man. That is an iconic, expensive, beautiful piece of equipment.
Oh, it's great. Oh yeah, it's great.
Wildly impractical, but beautiful.
Not a great home defense situation at all. But I did buy because I've been thinking about getting a gun for years, and so finally this year I was like, I just want to do it. And so my dad got me that one. That was technically my first gun, but I bought a M&P 2.0 compact, and nice. I've just been learning how to pull the trigger. And I want you to give me tips. Like, so I'm doing a lot of dry fire. I'm watching so many YouTube videos about like trigger pull techniques and grip, and I'm just getting the repetitions in over and over again. I bought a dummy round that's like a laser trainer, and then a target, and so I'm doing like dry fire exercises with a target, but I'm still fucking pulling to the left just a little bit.
I can help you. I can help you. Weirdly enough, a trainer. Because I always pull to the left, okay? So I, like, for 2 decades, I actually just Kentucky winded it. So whenever I was doing a marksmanship qualification for law enforcement at 15 or 25 yards, I would unironically aim at the right shoulder so my hits were going center mass. And the gun trainers were like, you're an idiot, just learn better trigger control and you'll be fine. And so weirdly enough, this is how so what my instinct with a pistol, weirdly enough, Destiny fixed this for me by taking me to a stream or taking me to a range. And then the range guy showed me this. Okay. So my instinct when pulling the trigger is to use my finger pad to pull the trigger because that just feels instinctively correct. But you're doing
it like this, right? You're gonna tell me to do it like this, right?
Yes.
Like keep this straight and do like the whole kind of like the two sections.
Yes,
on
don't
the top,
use your
right?
pressure pad, because your pressure pad is, or at least for me, mechanically, my pressure pad was yanking me off target. So what you do is you straighten out your finger, you wrap your entire finger into the trigger guard, and then you use, basically this part of your finger in order to gently squeeze the trigger in, which feels totally mechanically silly, but with long fingers, you kind of have to.
I do have long fingers. Yeah, I've met you. You're like 6'4", 6'5", or something, right? You're a pretty tall guy.
6'4", yeah.
I got really like long fingers, and the compact is not like tiny, but it's not like a big gun, And so I haven't seen anybody advise that. Like all the gun people on YouTube definitely say to use like the pad of your.
but I'm telling you, most gun guys are like, they're not 6'4". Let's put it that way. But I still like using my finger pad or whatever. It just feels instinctively correct. But I'm telling you that the trainer said, hey, put your whole finger in there, squeeze it with not your pressure pad, but squeeze it with the next bone in your finger because you have such long fingers. And then as a result, I was still doing it a little bit just because I think that there's just this pressure at the last moment where you're breaking the trigger, where you just need to force it a little bit to break the trigger. And so I still think I'm forcing it a little bit, which is yanking me a little bit left. But there were times, whereas normally shooting instructor is just yelling at me and saying, hey, you're pulling the trigger like a dickhead. Whereas when this guy showed me that trick, I actually started hitting the target where I was aiming instead of having to aim for the guy's right shoulder.
Yeah, I'll try that the next time I go to the range. It's a little counterintuitive, but shooting a gun is kind of counterintuitive. Like I was kind of shocked at how hard it is to not pull. Like the first shots I took with the Anaconda, I was way to the left. And in my mind, I had no idea why. And then I went home and I devoured a bunch of YouTube videos. I was like, oh, okay, there's way more to this than I thought. But you're fighting a parasympathetic response from your body. When you pull the trigger, it's like really hard to isolate your index finger and not move any of these other fingers. And so you have to train your hand to do this totally new thing.
That's why I have found the topic of violence and firearms and self-defense, law enforcement, military so fascinating for decades now. Because basically, like, you go watch an action film and the good guy's just like running around and like, hitting headshots like left, right, and center and all that kind of stuff while they're sprinting. Whereas when you actually start doing it yourself, you kind of realize it's like, no, I have to control my breathing. I borderline have to meditate. If my blood pressure was through the roof, that's probably going to fuck with my shots. And then you basically have to do like the way that yoga kind of emphasizes like bodily mechanics in the marriage of like the musculoskeletal system. Right. You have to do like yoga while trying to set off an explosion in your hand to accurately hit something. It's actually like really meditative in a range setting.
It's horrifying. Like the first time I went to the range, I was definitely nervous because I'd never been, and you don't want to be the guy that's being unsafe and everybody judges. And then I got comfortable because I went like 10 more times in like a month and a half. It's a really expensive habit, by the way. I'm glad that I got the dry fire thing to save some money on ammo. But yeah, we can move on for this because I don't think either of our chats want to get bogged down in shooting stuff. But
my chat loves it. And by the way, so content that I do, we can move on. But the weirdly enough, I think content that would be going gangbusters, and I keep talking about doing it, but I never do it, is liberal gun content. So you're coming in from a place of ignorance and skepticism and kind of like more pro gun control than pro gun, but you learn the fundamentals and the mechanics and the safety and the law.
Yeah, dude, I'm with you. We should brainstorm a business idea, because I'm telling you, like, for a liberal person looking for gun tips, you go on YouTube and everything is super right-wing coded, which doesn't bother me because I'm just there for the mechanics. I don't really care. But like the aesthetics, it's not that they're talking about politics, but it's very aesthetically right-wing coded on every fucking YouTube channel. We need some gun content with some like fucking baristas in the background, like a foamy latte on the table, like a sweater vest. you know, maybe your like vinyl collection, you know, like we need like a left-wing aesthetic, but have like gun content. There's so much. It's an untapped well of cash. I'm telling you.
I think so. I don't
unironically believe this, by the way.
Yes,
yes.
I'm working in order to get my shit off of the ground, and I'm doing okay, but I'm not rich yet. I don't have any savings. So basically, if we find the capital to do that, I would want. You could be my liberal avatar. You could be my wear the glasses, find a sweater vest. We'll pick up Starbucks lattes on our way. We'll make it aesthetically very like wine mom liberal friendly, and then we'll also approach firearms from a skeptical pro gun control, like if you were a skeptical pro gun control person but you were worried about self-defense or you were worried about an authoritarian government, then we would approach it from that angle. That way it doesn't feel like, you're right, a lot of gun content is effectively gun pornography. A lot of it is.
But there's also like something counterintuitive about it, because like when you go to a gun range, at least this has been my experience so far, it's kind of like in a way liberal coded once you get in there, because the people are generally like really nice and eager to show you how to have better form, and like people are, oh, that's a really cool piece. People will be like super friendly, you know. So there's an interesting opportunity for overlap there, I think.
Let's put a bow on it. There's a liberal libertarian crossover in the topic of firearms that could be not, I say exploitable, but you could capitalize on it and it would be phenomenal content. But you're right, we should move on. So getting back to
I just want to get you to lose your fear of, like, listen, I've been studying these people for years now. You do not need to worry about them taking over. I promise you. They are not organized enough. They're not. Let me give you an example. Like, so Hassan crashed out on his stream yesterday. I don't know if you saw any of it, but it is like some of the best content that we've had.
I DM'd you because I was going to watch your 30-minute video watching Hassan say that he would support a third-party candidate over Gavin Newsom. And then I was going to use the 30-minute content to roll into the 2-hour or 3-hour content, which is Hassan crashing out.
But all he was worried about basically for the whole stream was the fact that liberals were getting like likes on social media. That's where his head's at. Like, he's only interested in attacking the social media space. Like, he's only interested in like the clout aspect of it. They don't care enough about the actual sort of practical application of like political strategy. It's all just about the culture and the vibes, and that they're not interested in getting power that they would, the kind of power that they would need to do like a revolution of the proletariat. They're not serious.
So maybe I need to motivate you differently though. So you're saying that I need to not worry about the far left actually seizing narrative power or political power in the United States, and their incompetence is going to be
narrative power, yes, but not political power.
I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing because I want to beat up their narrative. But what I'm going to tell you, and maybe this is something that we can align on, excuse me. So you're right. The social media war is more important than the electoral war, but in the to them, not to me, not to you. But the electoral war for me is where a lot of damage can be done, and therefore we have to care about what they're saying. And so what I mean by that is, if Hassan, because I think you mentioned this in your coverage, which I'll break down later, you said the reason why normie libs, the reason why congressmen, the reason why normie news commentators keep engaging with Hassan is because they know that he has a large audience. They know that he has the ears of tens of thousands of young people, and they want to be able to reach those tens of thousands of young people. So it's not an endorsement of Hassan's politics. It's effectively a pragmatic calculation of how do we get to the eyeballs and earballs of young people.
Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely. Yeah.
But that being said, if Hassan maintains hegemony over tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of young people, then what can end up happening is him and his ilk, him and his orbiters, can still fuck over the Democratic Party in reference to electoral politics. And if they
Yeah.
don't believe in harm reduction, then you can have things like PEPFAR USAID, which I saw you bring up in the Vadim
Many times,
Ogre
many
Boy.
times. Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of like the greatest moral horrors of the early 21st century is how many people Trump is killing through incompetence. It's genuinely a moral horror that we don't even talk about.
Yeah, so I never said that they don't have a negative impact downstream from the social media wars. I'm specifically pushing back against the idea that they pose any kind of real institutional threat. These types of candidates, the far left types of candidates, they only tend to have seats in really deep blue areas. So once we get to the more competitive districts where it's like, you know, anywhere between R+7 and D+7, like those are typically not the seats that these people are getting. So they're really, really limited. Like they can only have success in like really blue areas. And then there's also that hard cap on power that I told you about before. I really don't think you need to worry at all about any kind of proletarian revolution for the foreseeable future. I really don't think that's going to change anytime soon, because that would require a level of competence and organization and strategy that these people are wholly incapable of.
Okay. I mean, like I don't know if you're looking for like me to say a different utterance or whatever, but
I want you to say that you would go for AOC over Vance is what I mean.
Okay, well let's talk about it, okay? Because AOC over Vance, let's break it down, because I think this is something that's really confusing to Pisco as well, and I'll try to be as brief as I can, although I'm a verbose person, so you're gonna have to forgive me. Okay, so how I feel like Pisco views the tech feudal bros, Peter Thiel and Elon Musk in Silicon Valley, he views them as Saturday morning cartoon villains who want to gut the power of the state so they can create their own techno-feudal fiefdoms, and then they can do whatever the fuck they want. And that's why they're getting into politics, but they don't even serve a positive social purpose, because the technology that they're delivering is in and of itself nefarious, and therefore we should check them. So do you agree with that assessment or no?
Not entirely, because there's some usefulness to the tech that's being developed. I mean, there's data concerns and privacy concerns and all these kinds of things, but I think that technology has largely made our lives better. But I do think that they are angling for an Ayn Randian kind of libertarian utopia. You know, I think they do want Greenland, for example, or they do want like an island somewhere where they can have their, you know, technocracy and libertarian fever dream.
No, I mean, I agree that that's their ideal. I just, similar to you, I don't think that they would necessarily achieve it because of the momentum of the current United States. But I want to point out a couple of technologies that a lot of liberals and progressives really don't like. They don't even like me being attracted to these technologies. Okay.
Oh boy.
So,
okay. I fight with my chat all the time, but go on this stuff, but go ahead. I think we're going to be on the same page.
Starship. Okay. Starship. Regardless of what you think about Elon Musk, regardless of what you think about Tesla, whatever, being able to move, because Starship has a 300,000, I think, pound. I forget if it's tons or pounds, but it's a fuckload. It's 3 Abrams tanks. You can effectively airlift 300,000 pounds, maybe tons. I'll Google it in a second, because I know that's a factor, a difference in factor. But you can airlift that. You can fly 17,000 kilometers an hour across the planet, and then drop it on the other side of the planet in 90 minutes. That's an insane technological achievement. And then not just that, but the reusable rockets with that large of a cargo capacity does make, like, not human colonization, but planetary colonization with robots possible.
Right.
That's amazing.
It is amazing. I agree. Yes. And yes, also flying taxis. I fight with my chat about this all the time, but you know, I guess we won't call them flying taxis, but they're like kind of drones, like these like quadricopter drones that are being developed for, you know,
don't they have
private
flying air
use.
taxis in China right now that everybody's scared to get in because they're afraid they're going to explode, but they exist and you can actually ride them?
In China, I don't know. In Dubai, they definitely are doing pilot programs, but they're also doing pilot programs, or they're going to be starting pilot programs in major US cities as well. But no, there's plenty of technology that I like AI technology right now. I mean, I think there's a lot of unethical uses of the technology. I think there are valid claims when it comes to stealing artists' work and not compensating them or anything. And I think that there are bad examples of AI doing things like affirming self-unaliving tendencies. We've seen examples of that happening. So the technology is still in a more rudimentary like phase of its development. But I went from being pretty broadly anti-AI to using it pretty regularly to get information, because I talk a lot about like, when did this vote happen and when did that thing happen? It's like really good at aggregating information in that way. But yeah, I'm not a Luddite. I definitely embrace, for the most part, I embrace technological progress and feel optimistic about where it's going to take us as a species.
Okay, then this is where I'm just going to be. Pisco's going to have an aneurysm, and your chat might be having an aneurysm as we speak. So the LLMs, I'm not really that skeptical of. I'm sure they're going to serve their utility. The reason why I don't use them though is just because I found them to be like 70% or 80% accurate, but then there's just like occasional things where the AI flubs, and I'm just like, I would rather Google and pull apart the information to make sure that I'm not repeating dumb shit. Because 1 out of 5 times, 1 out of 10 times, the AI spit out something that I knew was wrong, and so I don't want to be regurgitating bad information. However,
real quick though, like that's valid, but number one, the models are improving at a pretty rapid pace, and number two, just if you ask the model to give you sources for everything and then click on the sources, then that's like I think the best way to do it.
What model are you using? Because to be honest, I've only used ChatGPT half a dozen times. So what model are you using?
I know I use the paid ChatGPT, but honestly, like the Copilot built into Microsoft Edge, I have found to be like a pretty good aggregator. Again, if you're getting into really complex stuff, then that's when the margin of error, I think, increases. But when you're asking it very kind of direct questions about like, on what date did this thing happen, and you know, how many Republicans are serving in the Minnesota like House of Representatives, it's like really, really good at that kind of fine point, precision kind of information.
Okay, cool. Well, then that's cool. The other thing though is where, once again, people might rebel, but I'm going to make this point anyways. Peter Thiel, everybody can view as a Saturday morning cartoon villain. It's no skin off of my ass. I don't care if you think he's evil, but he has an interesting concern in reference to the human species, which is effectively that if you look at the agricultural revolution and if you look at the industrial revolution, there are so many technologies that we have matured over the past 200 years, including like avionics, motor vehicles, computers. You know, the information age has been revolutionary and all that kind of stuff, but we've matured so many different technologies, textiles, agriculture, all that kind of stuff. We've matured them, and so the rate of improvement is diminishing, and the rate of new technologies that we're engaging in is also diminishing. And so he feels like, rightly or wrongly, that we're moving to a technological bottleneck where the amount of new technologies that we're developing and the degree to which we can improve them is limiting over time. And so this happened immediately after the agricultural revolution. This happened during the industrial revolution. This is arguably happening during the information age revolution. And so what he wants to do, the reason why he wants deregulation, the reason why I think we might have even passed a bill that says that we can't regulate AI for the next 10 years, is because he wants to use AI as the thing that breaks the bottleneck. Because if you have a computer that's as smart as a human being, or smarter than a human being, that is capable of not only discovering new useful technologies, but also of maturing them through computer models, then that's the kind of thing that could break open that bottleneck. And so that's kind of the idealistic hope of AI, even though it's stuck in this libertarian Ayn Rand great men of history analysis. And while, once again, think Peter Thiel's evil if you want, that's an interesting idea that I think is at least worth exploring.
I just watched a video on my stream the other day with Chad about the national security implications of AI development, and it kind of scared the shit out of me. When you frame it within the context of an arms race with China, then all of a sudden it's pretty easy to imagine the technology leading to like pretty rapid destabilization if there are not sufficient guardrails in place. But then you also have to contextualize the, valid concerns about AI and potentially enacting regulations to sort of rein it in. You have to contextualize that within the context of the arms race with China, because if they develop AI technology that ends up exponentially just outpacing us, and then all of a sudden they're using that AI to infiltrate all of our digital, infrastructure and, shut off all the power or whatever, like the implications are pretty horrifying. So I don't know if we necessarily like have the option to overregulate AI right now.
The fear is real, and I respect the fear. I think this is where Pisco, God love him, Pisco thinks that I'm totally on board with just totally unregulated tech development, and I'm not. And also, when it comes to the fears are real. So, for instance, with Palantir, the way that they sell themselves on their own website is effectively an information aggregator for military decision making. So they say that the whole point is there's something called a Blue Force tracker that was around 20 years ago when I was in the military. And what it does is it tracks in real time based off of radio signals, friendly units that are in your area of operation. But what it also does is it tracks bad guy elements too. So if you are in the Blue Force tracker, and this is a 20-year-old technology, by the way, you could report, hey, I see, 3 dudes with machine guns and AK-47s at this location. And if you put it into the computer, then it's going to pop up with a like red dot, effectively letting people know that there's bad guys there. So now think about facial recognition being integrated into this. Think about drone technology being able to automatically report the locations of your friendly forces and of your opponents. Think about like the ability of AIs to recognize different weapon systems, identify them. And then also the way Palantir was selling itself in its own promotional material was generating all of this information, processing ideal systems of attack, I suppose, giving commanders options, basically like a ABCD of what do you want to do, and then letting commanders click on the button of what they think is the ideal choice in order to take out an enemy target. Now, that's cool. It's going to save lives. It's going to make the American military machine infinitely more lethal and dangerous and all that kind of stuff. But I think that when we apply that to an authoritarian country or the United States becoming tyrannical and authoritarian, it basically makes an insurgency against a tyrannical government difficult, to say the least.
Yeah, you're up against Skynet.
Yeah. Yes. Yes, you're up against, and that's another thing that's scary about the Ukrainian war, by the way, is I was scared when I was in Iraq and the bombs were on the ground and the snipers were hiding in cars. Now, the snipers and the bombs are fucking robots and they fly at you faster than you can process them. That's terrifying.
The videos out of Ukraine I find horrifying. Just the videos of the drones. I've seen like a dozen videos of drone, there's a camera and it flies up. I just saw one just last week and there was this Russian soldier that was just sitting there and just let it, like he just completely gave up and he's just like sitting there staring at this. He doesn't even try to run, doesn't open his mouth, doesn't scream, doesn't show any fear, just sat there just with a blank expression as this drone kind of slowly just came up and just eventually, I assume, blew him up because the feed cut. But yeah, I find that shit horrifying. I'm gonna get back to some of the reaction stuff that I was doing, but sure. Listen, I'm with you. I'm with you on if you're a pro democracy, anti-MAGA, coalition member, then fucking let's team up and
sure. But
you got to get more likes on Twitter though. That's how we beat them. We got to get more likes on Twitter. That's his kryptonite.
Yes,
He'll fucking freak out.
Well, I actually, we can move into any topic you want to move into, but I want to make a quick point. Number one, so people accuse you of overly criticizing the far left. I'm going to keep doing that because once again, I kind of view my job as like pushing on the fringes. That's kind of my job. But the other thing that I want to point out, though, is that there's kind of like a weird accelerationist tinge to the far left as well, where they almost want things to get so bad that way people turn to the far left in desperation. And so that's where I actually think that Hassan Piker's care about like social media shit is, number one, it's probably self-interested. But number two, I also think that it is kind of like conscious, subconscious. I don't really give a shit. It's a form of accelerationism where he wants the fascistic, authoritarian elements of the right to get so bad. And he wants the Democrats to be so weak in the face of that accelerated tyranny that then people start taking the far left more seriously as an alternative to weak Democrats and fascistic right-wing elements. And I don't want to play into his hand.
That's what he's all about right now. That's their grand overarching narrative. There's like a bunch of creators that fall into this thinking. Emma Vigeland, I think Kyle Kalinske still falls into this, although my friends think that he's on a better path now. We'll see. But there's a whole ecosystem of lefty creators, and they're all pushing the same narrative. And you're right. Their pitch gets a lot better. And what their pitch essentially is that the milquetoast establishment, corporate bought Democrats don't have what it takes to actually beat fascism. We're the ones that are actually offering solutions that will improve people's material conditions so they will no longer be seduced by fascism. And the Democratic Party establishment, they have their boots on our necks. And we would actually have power within the party if they would just step aside and let us do our thing. And then they further this narrative by saying that the Democrats literally rig elections against them. And so when they lose primary contests, it's not because their candidate was bad, or it's not because their messaging was bad. It's because the Democrats rigged it. The two most high profile examples of this being 2016 and 2020 with Bernie. They are convinced to their core that Bernie was going to win until the Democratic establishment stepped in and, basically rigged it against him. Of course, it's his job to convince primary voters, and he didn't convince enough primary voters in both of those races, and that's what happened. But they know that there's a kind of urgency right now to pounce on the Democratic Party and push this narrative. And they look at like the Democratic Party approval numbers, for example, are like really low. And that is something that we need to pay attention to. And they're like, see, like, look, everybody's turning on them. They don't have the motion. They don't have what it takes. But they also ignore, because we've been having special elections for the last year. Time didn't stop in November 2024. And in special elections all over the country, moderate establishment type candidates centristy candidates have been fucking crushing Republicans by insane margins. But the Hassans of the space, they will only talk about Mamdani. They will only talk about this progressive guy in Texas last week that had a huge overperformance. They will only talk about this race in New Jersey just a few days ago, where the moderates split the vote and inadvertently propelled the progressive to the top of the to the point where she won. They're entirely devoted to this narrative, and so their whole thing is like, there's blood in the water. This moment is representative of a left-wing Tea Party movement. They're going to take over. Their vision is going to be the one that's going to drive the Democratic Party. But in service of that narrative, all they do is just nip at the heels of the Democratic Party. They downplay electoral success from centrist or moderate candidates. They massively overstate electoral success when it's progressives. And I think you accurately summarized what they're all about. But in Hassan's case, and then I'll wrap up. In Hassan's case, by the way, I actually, at this point, after yesterday's crash out video, at this point, I do not think he is ideologically driven. I think it is entirely cynical, self-interested, enriching himself, getting more fame, getting more clout. Like, I actually don't think he's being strategic in a political kind of way. I think it's all about just like he and himself, and he's literally doing the Donald Trump thing where it's like, these libs are not coming after me. They're coming after you, and I'm in the way. So you need to go out there and like defend me. I'm not even kidding. In the video, you should watch his crash out today because it is so
I am
informative.
that dude.
It
That's
is
the
so
content
informative
for
on how
today.
his brain works, man. Because he spent hours. I'm not even kidding. Hours, scolding his chat and other lefty creators for not sufficiently defending him. He fucking literally did that. It is so Trumpy. And I just, at this point, I don't think he cares at all about like the actual politics.
Sure, but we also have to evaluate things and their consequences. So I do like understanding the motivations of people because I think that it makes you better informed on your allies and your opponents. But I also do think that if we look at the consequences, which is tens of thousands of young people are sucked into trying to defend Hassan Piker against this onslaught of, you know, center right and normie lib criticism. And that drives a wedge in the coalition necessary, the anti-MAGA coalition, then it is a problem. You know what I'm saying? So, like, it's a problem that should be capitalized on, where you basically beat the shit out of them. But, you know, it's still a problem if, let's say that the Vote Blue No Matter Who coalition breaks better than the Accelerationist coalition.
We will.
That kind of has to happen. Like, it has to happen.
We will.
Okay.
I promise you.
Well, I appreciate your confidence.
We're gonna get to November, and there will be some examples of high-profile kind of left-wing populist candidates doing well. I don't have a problem with that at this point. I mean, it's just about triage and just beating MAGA. I don't love populism, but I'll take a left-wing populist if they can flip a seat. That's fine for me. But I think November is going to be, for the most part, I think it's going to be a continuation of the trend that we've been seeing for the last several years, which is that more moderate centricity type candidates tend to do better in competitive districts.
So this is interesting to me because my political project, which let's just say that it has you know, I have a really passionate audience that supports me financially, and I love them for it. But you know, there's dozens of us. You know what I'm saying? Like we're not, you know, we're not pulling 20K live. You know what I'm saying? So the point is though, like in my ideal world, I would try to bring the Republican Party back to sanity. But I think that there's things that are motivating the radicalism amongst the American population, and it does have to do with income inequality, rapid demographic change, existential technological shifts, and then I always forget the last one. The dissolution of the social fabric. That's something that P.F. Young has said is like, these are the four major factors that are radicalizing the American people, and I agree with him. The point is, though, that with liberals, sometimes their propaganda is, we're not as bad as Trump, and we're not as crazy as the far left. And so I think that if these four problems are the things that are driving radicalism in the country, then the closest thing that I've seen to it is abundance liberalism. But there has to be technocratic solutions to these problems where Democratic leadership or center-right Republican leadership say, hey, we heard you. We understand these things are fucked up. We actually have a plan to make your lives better. Here's this ambitious, enthusiastic infrastructure plan that's going to revolutionize transportation on the West Coast and the East Coast. Or here's a new shift to the tax structure that still allows people to be entrepreneurial and rich, but also takes the tax burden and pressure off of the working class and the middle class. Or also, you know, I'm just memeing about the gun thing, or hey, we've done a cultural reckoning. We understand that a lot of the gun control measures that we are recommending are not popular with the center right. But here's a whole new host of gun control measures that are sane and will reduce American homicides. And we still respect the right of the people to keep and bear arms. We're not trying to repeal the Second Amendment, and we're not trying to nullify the Second Amendment through legislation, but we actually want to make sure that less Americans are being killed on an annual basis. Here's some technocratic solutions. And if the Democratic Party came out like that, then I think they would actually win substantively.
So there's a couple things that I want to respond to there. And the first one is, I think what makes the Democrats' job right now compared with their competitors in the Republican Party so difficult are institutional hurdles that the Republican Party don't necessarily have to contend with. So what I mean by that is like the things that the Republican Party want to do are not things that require generally a veto, filibuster-proof majority. So they don't need 60 votes to do like tax cuts, which is basically like that's like the number one thing they want to do when they get power is like some kind of like tax cuts. And then the rest, as we see is the case with Trump, he's been able to do, what is it, like a third to a half of Project 2025 just with executive authority. I mean, he can just single-handedly dismantle the Department of Education. He can single-handedly like bring in Elon and Doge, and they can just thoroughly gut these agencies and cut USAID spending. And so they don't have to worry about building the kind of consensus that they would need to do something like the ACA, which needs 60 votes. Like, what are the big policy goals that the Democratic voter base and the far left kind of contingent are not just asking for, but demanding? It's just like Medicare for all, single payer healthcare, paid family leave, massive humane immigration reform, pathway to citizenship, massive investment in renewable energy, like a Green New Deal type, like all of these like big, bold things require 60 votes in the Senate. And as it stands right now, the Democrats are hugely disadvantaged in the Senate. That disadvantage is growing every year as the disparity between representation gets bigger and bigger. You can have a situation where like 22 states have 44 senators and they have collectively less population than the state of California. I mean, that's a really big problem. So like that's a short-term challenge for the Democratic Party that's really difficult to overcome. The only way that I can think of doing it is getting rid of the filibuster, which I don't honestly love that idea, but I'm like 60-40 in favor of doing it because otherwise I don't know how the Democrats can make a pitch to the voters.
Yeah,
because I think you're right. They need to do like big and bold thing. And then the second thing I want to point out is like what you were saying in terms of what the Democrats need to do. You kind of described Joe Biden's presidency, by the way. Like he did a massive infrastructure deal. He did pass a bipartisan gun reform bill that had measures with broad consensus. Expanded background checks is like 90% of the country thinks that this was a good idea. Like limiting people that have been convicted of restricting access to guns for people that have been convicted of domestic violence. Like these are things that basically every American agrees on. Like Joe Biden did do a lot of these things, but in the end, it just wasn't enough. So
yeah. I think that was a number one. It's a problem of marketing. I think they were focused on achieving the legislative wins. They weren't focused, and unfortunately, we're in a social media world now. We weren't focused on marketing these wins as like the things that they were. And then the other thing was just the economic recovery from COVID was just anemic. I actually do not think that. I don't think that Trump won off of some, like, unlike MAGA, I don't think Trump won off of some like broad consensus that Trump was the guy to usher in the next generation of American, success. I think a lot of people thought Trump was a fucking dumbass. But what I thought they were thinking is that the economy is so anemic. This is a right-wing president. Republicans have branded themselves as the people who know how economics and business work and this, that, the other. Let's put Trump in there and turbocharge the economy. Now, we got the opposite, which is kind of ironic and funny, but that doesn't mean that it didn't happen. But I want to make a point to you real quick, and this is something that I think Democrats need to get smarter on, okay? So paid family leave, okay? Paid family leave as an example of a policy that you think the Democrats do not have enough political momentum to pass in the Senate, okay? Mm-hmm. Conservatism has changed in the past decade. I used to say that Donald Trump was not any kind of conservative whatsoever. He's not a fiscal conservative. He's not a social conservative. He's not a Burkean conservative. He's not a Reaganite conservative. He's not a neoconservative. He's a fucking piece of shit. He's not conservative at all. That's actually not true. Okay. There is a philosophy that is primarily emphasized in Poland and Hungary called national conservatism. And JD Vance is a national conservative, and they have a conference in the United States, and they're influential in right-wing politics right now. National conservatism says that the nation state, nation being the people, state being the governing body, the nation state needs to be protected demographically and culturally from chaotic forces. Therefore, anti-immigrant sentiment, anti-immigration policies, pro-family policies, pro-military industrial complex, or pro-security state in order to maintain the social order. These are the conservative things that they care about. But weirdly enough, they don't care about economic redistributivism. They don't care about protectionist economic policy, because even if it hurts the world stage, even if it hurts people in the short term, but it kind of protects this like national conservative stability, they will willfully make less money as long as they serve this ideal of the nation, meaning people. And so for
populism,
me,
right-wing populism, that's one form of right-wing populism. Yeah, so they're more open to kind of left-wing economic policy. So are you saying that there's an opening to get enough, maybe like enough Republicans in the Senate to sign off on paid family leave? Is that where you're going with this?
If you appeal to them along their own lines of propaganda, which is uncomfortable for Democrats, because the way that the Republicans are going to sell it to their own base is like, yeah, we're doing paid family leave, and that's a little socialisty, and that's a little, it's a little bit too socialisty, but we have a problem with the white birth rate. Like they might need to be explicit and say, we want to boost white working class families in America, and this is a way to boost them, which I know a lot of Democrats is going to find racist. But if you have to be a little racist in order to get paid family leave, then that might be a pill worth swallowing.
I don't know if you have to do that. I think you can frame it just by like, we're doing this to protect American families. Like, you don't need to explicitly say white American families.
But well, I'm talking about national conservative Republicans, because JD Vance would probably come out and say, why can't we prioritize the white working class? And then he'll be decried as a racist. And then he'll talk about national heritage and stock. And then he'll get called racist again. And I'm not saying whether or not he's racist. He could be racist in those things. But I'm saying, like, if it gets you paid family leave, Democrats don't have to talk about national heritage. Democrats don't have to talk about the white demographic replacement rate. They can just say, hey, this is good for all American families. Let's get paid family leave done. But then you're going to have to tolerate some vice signaling or virtue signaling from the racist national conservatives in order to get it done.
I don't think the Democrats, I don't think they would have a problem with taking the yes vote from someone like Josh Hawley, for example. If he's out there doing the focusing on protecting white American families, but he votes to pass paid family leave, they're not going to like kick him out of bed for, spilling crumbs or whatever.
But that's what I'm saying. That needs to be looked at as a political opportunity instead of a political liability. Otherwise, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, I think just broadly, I think this is a different problem that we've talked about a lot on this stream and on the podcast recently. But one of the other big problems for Democrats right now, apart from the institutional hurdles, which are real and growing, is the idea of a coalition has changed a lot over time. I'm sorry, chat, because I know I've talked about this like 50 times, but you used to have political coalitions in this country of, like the FDR coalition was like a third segregationist. But people viewed coalitions back then totally differently. They were like, this is not a marriage. We are not, just because I'm in a political coalition with you does not mean that I don't abhor some of your views. Like the idea back then was you can be in a coalition with someone who had some views and policy positions that you loathed, but there was like a shared understanding that even though we disagree fundamentally on some really big sticking points here, we can work together to, for example, pass New Deal era legislation. That idea of a coalition in the modern era has completely been annihilated because of this new form of purity politics. Like Obama talks about this a lot. It drives the left-wing populist crazy when he talks about purity politics. I don't even think they understand what the term means, because they hear that and they're like, oh, so you don't want to be morally pure? But that's not what the phrase means. The phrase means, like, if you're purity testing someone out of your coalition, what that means is you're pushing out someone who should be a natural ally. You're pushing them out of the coalition because of some other kind of difference. And that has become the dominant way of viewing political coalitions within the left wing for the last 10 to 15 years. And it just,
which is totally psychotic and counterproductive. I was defending your honor on Monday because I think you were defending Ezra Klein's honor in reference to the concept of pro-life Democrats. Yeah. And so that was like and whoever did the hit piece, I forget who it was, but they were basically calling you a piece of shit for even entertaining. I think. Yeah, for even entertaining the pro-life Democrat concept, because it's like, how can we be in a coalition with people who hate fucking women? Fuck these people. And like, they totally, sorry, go ahead. If you want to pop off.
So the Ezra Klein thing, like they missed the whole thing. They missed the whole point.
Yeah, they missed entirely.
The point. And I think Ezra Klein kind of did it to himself a little bit because he did pick a bad issue to say we should be running, because he said specifically, I think we should be running pro-life Democrats in Nebraska and Missouri. But then when you went to Nebraska and Missouri, I guess both states have passed, pro-choice kind of legislation protecting abortion. So people were like dunking on him for that. But the point was not the specific example. Like it could be anything. It could be what you're talking about, electing someone who's like really tough on the border and pro-gun, but then also like has a lot of left-wing economic policy.
Which honestly, that's like my ideal candidate. And if they had a D or an R next to their name, I would check that box regardless of what party they were affiliated with.
Right, but like somehow in their minds, I'm the one that has to justify the idea of welcoming potentially like a pro-life Democrat serving in and what we're talking about, you guys, is fucking like an R+10 district. We're talking about like an R+10 district that hasn't flipped in fucking 20 years. Okay. We're talking about, West Virginia, and so if you say, well, if you endorse a policy of welcoming a pro-life Democrat in an R+10 district into your coalition, well, why would you do that? Doesn't that mean you hate women? And Ezra Klein made the point that none of these people ever address. And I think it's like it's the point. It is the most important point. It's like, well, how can you say, like, how can we be expected as a party to protect vulnerable populations, to protect women's right to have, reproductive health care or whatever, if we don't have majorities? That was his point. It was just like, if we're just constantly out of power, then how can we protect trans people? So it's like, it's paradoxical in a way. You welcome one pro-life Democrat into the coalition if it meant getting a majority in Congress. But then what do you do with that majority? You have 2 pro-life Democrats and then fucking 275 other Democrats that are not pro-life. And so the risk of them, banning abortion federally from running a pro-life Democrat in a R+10 district is not realistically present whatsoever. Yeah. And, you've made that compromise to get that majority with no risk of anti-abortion legislation. And you have one more vote to deliver on your legislative agenda. And again, he's appealing to the idea of a coalition that used to be the way that people looked at coalitions for decades.
Well, I mean, it's actually just how democracies function. Democracies are not based off of lockstep 2-party system where everybody inside the party agrees on everything. It's based off of caucuses, and like the Blue Dog Democrats, who were the more conservative, socially conservative Democrats, and the segregationists, like you mentioned, in the early 20th century. They were tolerated, even though they were segregationist, because they knew that they could achieve positive legislation for the American people, despite being viciously disagreeing on segregation. And so the pro-life Democrat, I think it encapsulates this idea so much, because let's say that a pro-life Democrat was the difference between, like, what you said, bear in mind, I'm not like a huge electoral guy, but you basically need like 60 senators in order to pass legislation unchallenged, right? Unless you want to destroy the filibuster. So let's say you're at 59 Democrats that are on lockstep on the agenda, and then you have one pro-life Democrat who you could support to win election, or you could let them flounder and, fuck up. And you agree with the pro-life Democrat on paid family leave. You agree on immigration reform that's humane. You agree on like 70% of the policy agenda you agree on. but then you just don't agree because they just happen to be religiously devout and they're anti-abortion. And so you say, fuck that. You're anti-woman. So therefore you can't be a part of the team, and then you lose the election. Well, obviously you just lost access to all of that 70% of the legislative agenda. And not understanding this is like middle school civics level of understanding of government.
Well, they refuse, in my experience, when I speak to these types of lefties, they simply refuse to engage in a substantive way in a conversation about harm reduction applied in a realistic way. They just don't, they will not go there. And so you have a situation now where I'm getting a bunch of people spamming clips of me saying that I would vote for Jeffrey Epstein in 2028. If he had a D next to his name, he would deliver a Democratic Party agenda. And I'm getting, there's another clip of me saying that I would probably vote for segregationist if I lived in like an R+10 district and he had a D next to his name.
But stand on business. Just go, yup, harm reduction, bitch. Like,
but they're so absurd with their refusal, their stubborn refusal to have a conversation about harm reduction, that they'll like, I'm not even kidding. Hold on, let me find it. Fuck. Okay, hang on. I'm not gonna be able to find it off the top of my head, but somebody was in my mentions doing he was like pushing me on Jeffrey Epstein and be like, oh, aren't you the guy that said you would want Jeffrey Epstein in the party? And I asked him, would you vote for Jeffrey Epstein if you knew that it would prevent an extinction level event on planet Earth? And he said no.
Yeah,
you know, Prime Kais is another one of these guys that does that, where you ask them, like, if you could stop the end of the universe by voting for someone who maybe supported aid to Israel, would you do it? And he said, no, I have fucking principles. It's fucking absurd. And like, if these people engaged in an honest conversation, honestly, about like harm reduction applied to the current political dynamic, it would shatter their entire like foundational structure.
Yes, but
they would realize everything I believe is fucking silly. Yeah.
Hold on. It's deeper than this though, because this is actually where I think this is an accurate way to describe Hassan Piker's politics. Okay. Politics, weirdly enough, is who wields power and how, in the nature of that power. That is politics.
Yes.
What that guy said is having an opinion on the internet. And he thinks that politics is having the correct opinion on the internet.
Yes.
That's not fucking politics. That's having an opinion. What a fucking asshole.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. If all of these people could, like, I'm just going to start asking them, if you could get into a time machine and go back to, 1932, and if you could convince FDR to kick out all of the racist segregationists in the coalition, but it meant no New Deal era politics and no expansion of the federal government, would you do that? I just want to, and they'll just, if you ask them this question, they're never going to answer that honestly, Yeah. Like, what are they going to say? Yes.
I have principles. Of course I would.
But what's your principle, right? Like, to your point,
your principle is gutting the welfare state. That's your principle. That's what it's costing you.
Your principle is being morally pure and then giving the Republican Party like unfettered freedom to pursue their agenda in the current form of the party, which is, I believe, to be fascist. But
you're in a different position than I am, so I would actually appreciate this if you did it. Okay, I think that the hit piece actually put a lot of respect on your name in the beginning of it, because they were like, he's a Call of Duty streamer. He was really successful. He has 860,000 subs. He could really have an impact on his, like, while criticizing you and calling you a piece of shit. They also put a lot of respect on your name. And I think your criticisms against Hassan are actually ramming home. But if I could like infiltrate your brain and make like this thing a central focus of your criticism, it would be like identifying who's actually interested in analyzing and going through and like trying to advocate for the best politics, and who's interested in having an opinion on the internet, and then just bullying the fuck out of the people who just want to have an opinion on the internet, because there's so much, they call it noise and signal. Okay. So signal is an understandable thing that comes through, and you can understand what's going on, whereas noise is like an undecipherable, communication or whatever. And so because all the people who just want to have opinions on the internet are so fucking loud, they are a huge amount of noise in the online political zeitgeist that makes like listening to Signal almost impossible.
Right. Yeah. That's a good way to put it. I never thought. I appreciate that that take. Yeah. I think you're right. I think people are valuing like looking morally pure and looking like they have the correct opinion on the thing that's going to keep them in the good graces of the political tribe. They value that,
but that's not
more
politics.
than they value policy. It drives me insane. I do want to cut this off because I want to get back to some of the reactions that I was.
No, I love it. But we were live for together for 90 minutes or something like that. That's a perfect VOD. Cut the VOD right there. That's excellent. So yeah, but
I'll reach out to you for more gun tips.
Dude, DM me for more gun tips, not just DM me for gun tips, but if there's let's say that some oiler jumps in and they throw you 10 grand for like pro liberal gun tent or something like that, then let's figure out a way to come out to LA or come out to Orlando and do some basic liberal gun tent. I think that would be fucking amazing.
Los Angeles?
What's that?
Do you ever go to Los Angeles?
I don't really have a business reason to do so. I just don't have a lot of IRL collaborations. But I mean, I love LA. I love Southern California. It's one of my favorite places on the planet. I lived in San Diego for 2 years, and if I was if I was a billionaire, I would live in San Diego. I love San Diego with my whole heart.
Fucking beautiful. Yeah, it's great. It's better than Los Angeles. But if
I have an excuse, I'll come out.
Yeah, hit me up definitely, because I've been going to the range with like other people. It's like I'm now using it to socialize, so it's like a lot of fun. But yeah, hit me up if you ever come down.
Okay, sounds good, buddy. You have a great day. I'll catch you.
Hey, you too. Take it easy, buddy. Bye.
Short says, I was just in Hutch's stream and he was shit talking you and saying how he would never be friends with someone who dislikes Hunter Biden. True.